part of this module, a big focus, particularly for that first assignment, is very much on reflective practice. We will have touched on a little bit of reflective practice in your academic research and professional skills module, so you can refer back to that as a point of reference to kind of refresh and remind your ideas about it. But also what I thought would be useful is to kind of cover some key content within this session to then link back into this assessment of that blog and reflective writing process. So first of all, we're going to look at is experiential learning. So this is giving students a chance to acquire and apply knowledge, skills and feelings to immediate relevant situations. So actually using your skills and developing them in that workplace. Experiential learning thus involves a direct encounter with a phenomenon or experience, and it being studied rather than merely just thinking about and encountering it. So it's actually really investigating and considering and developing and thinking something about that topic or that experience that you developed. Key to experiential learning is very much around reflection. So basically, referring to Jones 2006, 10 years of coaching without reflection is equal to 1 year of coaching repeated 10 times. So reflection is particularly important within our sporting industry because we actually learn from our mistakes, build from them and develop in that way. So what is reflection? So here's some kind of little key quotes and information and definitions of reflection. So a basic one, turning a subject over in your mind and giving it serious consecutive consideration. Those who accept a reflective pose investigate the assumptions that inform their behaviour and accept responsibility for their actions. That's Dewey, 1966. So reflection isn't a new phenomenon, it's something that's been going on for years and it's used in lots of different industries to build and develop staff and people within their organisations. It's a capacity for autonomous professional self-development through systematic self-study. So it's about developing yourself, but also being able to analyse yourself and also, look at yourself in a critical way. So here's a kind of little theoretical approach to the concept of reflection. It's about actually conducting a conversation with yourself, having that discussion, that critical edge, looking at the professional judgment, asking yourself questions like what if or how can I do this better. It's also around being faced with fresh problems to which there is no right answer. So professionals has a responsibility to appraise the situation and then maybe formulate an effective strategy to problem solve and work towards that situation. And it's around that self-critical development. Critical reflection includes questioning routines, habitual practice, challenging the conventional wisdom of a certain matter. So it's all those key thinking things of when you're doing something, reflecting back and looking over them and kind of playing those things over in your mind and acting on from those situations or problems that you occur. I've got a little task for you. If you're working in a group scenario or there's people around, you can have a discussion about it. If you're working independently, then it's again just jotting down some notes about what you think about this topic. So what I'm asking is why reflect? Why do you think it's important to reflect on practice or experiences? Note down as many ideas you can think of. So hopefully you've spent a little bit of time coming up with some ideas. You may have some of the ones I'm going to go through now and you may have some of your own, which is great. Why reflect? Use reflective practice to be accountable for providing the best service possible. So you're trying to improve yourself or improve the service or delivery that whatever you're doing. It's about that continuous improvement and delivery, but it's also about working to maintain professional development and those CPD opportunities. Reflection is particularly useful maybe when things aren't successful. So it's not just focusing on the positive, it's actually going, well, actually, why did this event go wrong? What happened? What made things not work to plan? And actually investigating and looking into the objective reasons behind that. It's a particularly useful skill which is transferable across a whole range of employment, life in general. So what's we're really kind of embedding reflective practice and you to be able to reflect on your work and what you're doing, whether that's coaching, managing an event, doing work placements, reflecting on your submission of work. We'll always be asking you to go through that reflective process. So there's various different models of reflective practice. You may have recognised some of these names that I've got up here on screen. So we've got Gibbs, 1988, which is a significant event framework. You've got Kolb, 1984, which is the development of a learning cycle. And then Sean, 1983, which then further developed into 1987, the 3 types of reflection. So the significant event framework, here you can see on the diagram on screen, there's lots of different stages to this Gibbs model. The first stage being description, so you're describing what happened. Stage 2 is feelings, what were you thinking about and feeling, so actually, you're looking at your emotional intelligence. Stage 3 is around that evaluation, so what was good about what you did, but also what was bad or maybe needed to be improved. You're then going to take that information and start to analyse it and make sense of it and make sense of the situation. From that, you should hopefully be able to draw some conclusions on what you could have done or what you could do next. And then you should be able to formulate a nice action plan. So if the situation or you did the event or whatever it is again, you'd be able to do it in a different way. And obviously then that feeds back into the reflective process and you continue through that cycle of stages. So Kolb's cycle is a little bit more of a simplistic approach. The first area is testing out new situations, maybe planning, putting together whatever we're working on. We're actually then going to do it. We're going to concrete and develop some experiences. You may observe and reflect during that. So it might not be you doing, you might be seeing other people and reflect from those experiences. And then you're actually able to abstract and review those concepts or experiences that you're going through. So it's that plan, do, observe, review process to actually reflect on, maybe it might be you doing a reflection on someone else. So you might be looking at a performance coach and reflecting on how they deliver their sessions and what you can learn from that. Or it might be reflecting on you within a situation. So there's lots of different ways to reflect and learn from that reflective process. The final one we're going to look at is Sean, and he breaks it down into 3 areas. So reflection on action, which is basically referring to what occurs after the experience. So referring to kind of something happens, you coached a session, something went wrong, or something went really well, and you're reflecting after that. Reflection in action is actually part of the process of an effective practitioner. It's actually why you're performing. So in a coaching context, it might be that you're delivering a session, it's to little children and they start to get a bit disengaged and bored. So my reflection in action would be, right, I need to change my activity, I need to do something different. Retrospective reflection on action is outside of the present action. So actually looking back at it in retrospectively and thinking and developing from that. So some guideline principles for reflective practice. It's about you, your role and your work. Okay, so that's when we're applying it to this module. It's about reflecting about your learning and your experience and your coaching, your leading. It's also about valuing what you do and why you do it. And then it's about having that conversation with yourself, asking questions, what have you done, what could you have done better, and thinking about the key elements of reflection and how you can link those models into that process and thought of developing yourself. So I've got a nice task for you now. What I'd like you to do is write a description of an event that happened over the past week or 2 weeks, which is of significance. It can be absolutely anything. You can only write 1 paragraph, but it's just simply describe what happened. So looking at from a kind of description versus reflection perspective, so this description of a student, coach delivering a recent coaching session, it could be around describing what happened during that activity. So to develop a reflective essay with a bit of analytical writing within it, we need to make sure that we include that descriptive element, but also that reflective element. So this descriptive element might describe the facts that made up the event or the experience that set the scene. And then we add that to reflection where we're evaluating experiences. We may bring in some of those models that we've talked about. We may bring in some theory and might be about developing key skills and then link those things together. And that's where we're going to culminate into that reflective analytical piece of writing. So if I actually put that in a diagrammatic kind of table format, so I mentioned about the student coach delivering a recent coaching session. So description would focus on the physical environment, where he was, who he was coaching, with the parents, the weather, the volunteers, who he talked to, what he did, what he was told to do. Whereas the reflection element, which you would then bring in and make more of that critical analytical piece of work, was how he felt at the time, what he learnt from the experience, what he discovered he did not know, or what his perceptions was before the placement. Did the experience confirm or challenge his previous experience or understanding? What he plans to do about moving forward and developing ideas further, and maybe what skills he needs to develop to inquire to improve his delivery. So clearly you can see there's a clear difference between the descriptive and reflective process, but where we combine those two together, we're going to end up with that analytical writing for reflective essays, which is one of the key things you're going to be asked to do as part of your placement modules.